How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the 1IQ Sports Talk channel. Brendan Donald here today for a Chicago Bears game review after week number 3, where the Chicago Bears ended up falling to the Indianapolis Colts, and it was just, frankly, a really tough game to watch. Ended up losing 21-16 in this matchup. Least there's pretty much only two bright spots that I can really talk about in this game. Is that Caleb Williams, 33 for 52, 363 yards, 2 TDs, and 2 interceptions. So right there, he had himself a much better day passing. This is the best day that we've seen from him passing. Funny enough, this is the 11th best passing game in Chicago Bears history in terms of passing yardage. So right there, he's already, going up there and breaking records. He in only his third game as a Chicago Bear, but he also has the most passing yards in a single game this season by any quarterback, which I think is also really impressive. Granted, when you throw the ball 52 times, you should have a significant amount of yards, and that's exactly what we saw out of this game. The other bright spot in this was Rome Odunze. He finally had his breakout game, having 6 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown with a long of 47. Caleb and Rome, they were connecting. That was excellent to see. Cole Kmet was also getting out there and getting a bunch of catches as well. 10 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. DJ Moore also having a pretty good day, 8 catches, 78 yards. So right there, it tells me that Caleb and his receivers are connecting. Because again, we talked about who are going to be the big 3 guys coming into this season that were going to catch passes. It was DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Cole Kmet. And then Rome Odunze was going to be sprinkled in there, having games from here to there. But since Keenan Allen hasn't been playing these last 2 weeks, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, and DJ Moore, they really showed that they can be effective receiving weapons for Caleb Williams. That's pretty much where the positives stop, I would have to say, from this game. This was one of the worst games I've watched this team play in a significant amount of years. Like last year, we had the 3 games where you were leading against the Broncos, you lost that game. You were leading against the Lions, you lost that. You were leading against the Browns, and you lost that. Those were all tough games. But those were just simply coaching screw-ups throughout the game that just ultimately caused it to be a little bit worse going towards the end, and they didn't really have the proper schemes and, all this and that. This was just bad from the start. You look at Caleb Williams, it's hard to enjoy that game from Caleb and Rome because of how bad everything else was. You look at the running game. DeAndre Swift, this has been 3 games at this point. I think he's had 30 rushes for less than 100 yards throughout this game. So yeah, he's had 37 rushing attempts, and he has 68 yards. That is just horrendous. At this point, he's ranging, if you average out what we've seen over these 3 games, to potentially get less than 300 yards rushing at the end of the year. That's horrible, man. That is absolutely terrible. Roschon Johnson was the best running back out there. And even going back to last year, I always looked at Roschon Johnson coming into this season as he should probably be our number 1 unless we go out there and get a superstar running back. I was okay with DeAndre Swift being signed here. Again, I thought the O-line was going to be better. I thought the play calling was going to be better, but neither of those are. And for DeAndre Swift, unfortunately, he kind of needs both of those things to really help him out. Again, we saw what he was capable of doing in Philadelphia, and the Eagles felt fit to go out there and get an upgrade with Saquon Barkley. Now, I kind of wonder what Saquon Barkley would be looking like in this offense. I don't know if it would be much better. I can't imagine it would be any worse, but the running game was still a problem. You went up against the worst run stopping team in the league right now. They had almost allowed 500 rushing yards in their first 2 games of the regular season, and you somehow managed to collectively put up 63 rushing yards against the team that had previously allowed almost 500 over their first 2 weeks. This was one of the worst defenses in the NFL over the course of the first 2 weeks. This was the Chicago Bears get right game on offense. This was the game where you were supposed to open up holes, you were supposed to find running lanes, you were supposed to have 150 running yards. DeAndre Sweat was supposed to get 100 rushing yards in this game. And then, Caleb Williams, 200, 250 passing yards, a couple of TDs, but this was supposed to be the running attack. This was the game that you were supposed to do that. And the fact that Caleb had to throw the ball 52 times. Don't get me wrong, I love Caleb. I think he played fairly well. There was a few passes that I still think he wants to have back, but we're going to be saying that about every single game this year with Caleb because he's a rookie. Every single quarterback, every single game has passes that they want back, especially rookie quarterbacks, and even more so for rookie quarterbacks. And so these types of situations, we're expecting that, but he was still managed to get sacked 4 times. I don't know how many pressures he had against him this week. I imagine it's probably up into the 20s. If I had to guess, I haven't seen anyone talk about it. So, but at least he didn't get sacked 7 times and be pressured 36. So that's positive. That's positive, but you're kind of really grasping at straws right now. So I think Caleb this season, if I were to take a look at, I think he's been sacked close to 15 times. I think he might have been, so it was, so 6, so he's been sacked 13 times this year, as I just looked at the stats. So he was sacked twice in his first game, 7 the second, and 4 this time. That's not good enough. That is just simply not good enough. How is he expected to make it the entire season if he ends up getting sacked 14, or if he ends up getting sacked 4, or let's just say on average 3 times a game? 3 times a game is a rough position. It is just an absolute joke what this offensive line is. I think Matt Pryor at right guard was better than Nate Davis. I think Nate Davis is one of the worst O-linemen in football right now, and he was penciled in as a Bears starter. And after the season that he had last year, and this is the thing, the season that he had last year, I was kind of defending Nate Davis, going, yeah, he might have some issues on the offseason, but once he got into football, he was playing, and he was playing well. But everything that has happened this offseason, I went, it's just not worth it. I was campaigning for him to be cut. I didn't think he should make this team. I thought you just move on. You have some decent alignment, so I thought. But I still think Matt Pryor should be playing left guard, and Tevin Jenkins should be moved back over to right guard, so at least Darnell Wright and him can play on the same side. But yeah, the O-line, again, a problem against the defense that didn't have DeForest Buckner. Just imagine what DeForest Buckner would have done if he was out there. It would have been even worse. The play calling was an absolute mess on both sides of the ball. There was times where I don't know what to say. This was just horrendous play calling. I was extremely excited when I saw that we hired Shane Waldron as our offensive coordinator, because he had worked, for both Belichick and for McVay. He had experience with that. And then he also worked under Pete Carroll in Seattle, where he had a good year with Russ. Then he kind of rejuvenated Geno Smith a little bit. And, last year was the only year where Seattle fans, I think, were a little bit upset with Shane Waldron. And I kind of went, oh, that's just every team complaining about their offensive coordinator. Unless they have one of the best offensive coordinators, you're probably going to complain. But this was just bad, man. Like, the amount of plays where I walked back, where I was just watching the game going, oh, they're going to run this because it would be stupid to run this. And then they would run it. They had a speed option play on 4th down on the 1 yard line. Again, they had 4 plays to get into the end zone at one point in the game, and they ran the ball 4 times. Now, I understand we've been calling for the team to run the ball more, but it had been pretty apparent at that point that you couldn't move the ball on the ground. And you have the first overall pick for a reason in Caleb Williams. Allow him to at least throw the ball twice. Run it, get stuffed, throw it. Doesn't work, run the ball again. You're going to go for it on fourth down because at that point you were down in the game. At least try to do that. And again, that speed option play. I have no idea why anyone would try to run that play with this offensive line. And the offensive line, like, you can go find pictures of it online. People are reviewing it, and it's an absolute joke. It is horrendous play. And Chris Morgan was the only holdover, or one of the only holdovers from the offense from last year, because he was supposed to be this offensive line guru. He's the run game coordinator, and he's just supposed to do this, and this. He hasn't done anything. Like, I haven't seen any of our own linemen, develop more than what they were projected to be. Braxton Jones, I would say, is probably the only guy that has outperformed what we thought he could be. This year, it seems like everyone on the O-line has taken some level of regression. Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones had okay games from the tackle spot. We haven't been talking about Tevin Jenkins having a good year. We haven't been talking about Coleman Shelton or Nate Davis. Like, again, Nate Davis and Coleman Shelton, I've been saying we need to move on from those guys pretty much since week number 1. Week number 2, it was like, okay, it's officially time to just fully move on from these two players. And, I hope Tevin Jenkins can become better, because last year I thought he was a Pro Bowler. I thought he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl. And I said this year he's going to get there for sure. He's going into a contract year. And I was kind of annoyed with Ryan Poles for not signing him to an extension. And I kind of understand it now, because they wanted to see if he can play a full season, which, at this point he's played the full 3 games so far, so kudos to that. But, knock on wood, hopefully he can stay healthy for the rest of the year. But B, if he's worthy of getting paid top dollar, because again, if he's just going to be your run-of-the-mill average offensive lineman, I don't know if I want him. If he's just going to be just your casual, just run-of-the-mill guy, it's one of those things of going like, yeah, let him walk. Let him walk at that point. But the O-line, the play calling, and the run game has been absolutely atrocious. I think next week, DeAndre Swift should be running back number 2. You gave him a ton of money, but he's not doing anything. The only guy that's been able to do anything while running the ball is Roschon Johnson. He was back for the first time last week. Again, week number 1, he was still dealing with some of those injuries, so I get it, you're not playing him. Week number 2, their reasoning behind it for not playing him was, well, we just wanted him to get in closer game shape. And week number 3, he was our best running back. I think he needs to be the bell cow right now. I think DeAndre Swift, unfortunately, you got to go out there on passing downs so you can block as a passer or be a receiver in that situation. But for Roschon Johnson, in running plays and for passing plays, because again, he had 4 catches for 32 yards. He was the 4th best receiver in this game for the Bears. So I don't think, like, I genuinely look at Roschon Johnson as the best running back on this team. But right now, again, the offense, it was the play calling, it was the O-line, it was the running game, it was just all combination of that. But then you look at the defensive side of things. This was a defense where you looked at and went, okay, we know we're going to stop their running game. Anthony Richardson is a tough guy to stop, but you'll be able to get him. Jonathan Taylor, he's one of my favorite backs in the NFL. I love Jonathan Taylor. But I looked at it and went, okay, you went up against Joe Mixon in week number 2, completely shut him down. You went up against Tony Pollard, and you, for the most part, you really shut him down. And I thought Jonathan Taylor was going to be the exact same because of this Bears defense. And again, you can't expect the defense to be perfect every single week, and I get that. But, not being able to stop Jonathan Taylor was a really, really big problem That was a big problem. If you would have stopped Jonathan Taylor to half of the yardage and one more touchdown, Bears probably end up winning that game. And in fact, they probably would have won that game because the Colts would have only been at 14 points. And Anthony Richardson, man, he is just not a great quarterback. And right now, he might be something in the future, but this is a kid that is incredibly raw, and he he almost lost that game for the Colts. You know, the two interceptions were bad interceptions. The first one where he just kind of, they were in the red zone and he just panicked and he basically just threw it to Tremaine Edmonds. And then the second interception to Jalen Johnson, he just straight up threw it to Jalen Johnson. He said, I don't want to be out here on offense anymore. Here you go, Jalen. Here's your second of the year. Try to break your record. Easiest interception Jalen Johnson is ever going to have in his career on that one. But for me, I don't feel like the defensive play calling was all that great either. I think, you know, everyone was kind of having a rough day. And so for the defense, they had some, like, the defense had a poor day, in my opinion. Again, they only allowed 21 points, but if Anthony Richardson had played like a competent quarterback, like a top 15 quarterback, the Bears defense would have gotten shredded. They would have been absolutely demolished. Like, you just look at how bad Anthony Richardson played, and if you look at if he played like a top 15 quarterback in the league, this game would have gotten out of hand really quickly. It would have been horrifically bad. If this was CJ Stroud last week going up against the way that the Bears defense played, this probably would have ended, I think the Colts probably would have had like 31, 34 points in that range, as opposed to what the Colts had in 21 and keeping it a game. It was just an absolute joke. And at this point, people are understandably calling for the coaching staff's job of going, it should be Eberflus fired, it should be Shane Waldron fired. And I already know at this point the Bears aren't going to fire any coaching staff mid-season. That's just not what they do. And I think it would honestly be kind of foolish to fire any of them in season anyways. Again, if people want to say like, oh, I want Eberflus to stay here for 2 years, kind of like what I'd been saying coming into the season, I want Eberflus to have at least 2 years with Caleb. But at this point, if you're going to fire Shane Waldron at the end of the year, you might as well fire Eberflus, because if you're going to bring in a new offense, you might as well just bring in a new head coach that's going to be offensive oriented. I've been saying this for years. Defensive coordinators turning to head coaching jobs do not get it done. Sure, they're great culture builders and they can do this, that, and the other thing. But when it comes to developing guys, like Ben Johnson's going to be available, Bobby Sloak's going to be available, Clint Kubiak is going to be available. Those should be the only 3 guys we are talking about in February, or I guess in this case in January, because the Bears aren't going to make the playoffs at this rate. If we're sitting back and talking about who should be the next head coach of the Bears, those are the only 3 guys that I'm going to consider. If you try to bring in a Brian Flores or a Bill Belichick or this, and that, I'm not hearing it. I'm not taking it, because none of those guys are going to win this team a championship. And people go, oh, well, what if you get the offensive coordinator spot wrong? You know, we got it wrong with Matt Nagy. Yeah, that's because Matt Nagy wasn't willing to change and adapt to his players. We see Ben Johnson doing that. We see Bobby Sloak doing that. We are sure as hell seeing Clint Kubiak doing that. Again, we need to see more from Clint Kubiak, I understand, because the Saints, you know, they played 2 good games and then they ended up losing to the Eagles this week. We need to see a full body of work from Clint before I'm willing to say that he is one of those guys. But Bobby Sloak and Ben Johnson, we know from occasion those teams have bad days on the offensive side of the ball, but for the most part, I would say 85% of the time, those offenses are some of the best in the league. And, you know, if somehow, and I really do mean somehow, like a Mike McDaniels becomes available, like the Dolphins decide to move on from him, or let's just say the 49ers somehow just continue this losing streak and they say, hey, Kyle, I think it's just time for a change. If Kyle Shanahan somehow becomes available as a head coach, if you are not paying him heaven and earth to come to Chicago, I don't know what would do. Again, that's a pipe dream for me. I don't think Kyle Shanahan would ever be fired from the 49ers. I think it would take a lot. And who knows, maybe it's one of those situations where we're talking about Kyle Shanahan, that, his first head coaching stint, he was there for years, he did a lot of good things, it just ultimately didn't work out, and he needed to go somewhere else, like what we talked about with Andy Reid, because with Philadelphia he was doing this and that, and he just couldn't get over that final hump. Then goes to Kansas City and again finally gets this. And yeah, it is, you never love talking about these situations this early in the year of basically looking forward to the off season. But at this point, I walked away from that game just depressed. Like, it was horrible, horrible football to watch. It was an absolute joke of a game. I genuinely don't know if this team's going to win another game. And like at the beginning of the year, I felt this team could win. But again, let's talk about the schedule here. We're going up against the Rams. Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. I said going into this week that if the Bears can perform and play really well against the Colts, they are going to be easy favorites against the Rams. They're somehow favorites already against the Rams in this week, which I think is batshit crazy. They should not be. And you should 100% be betting the Rams in that at the moment. But I can't see how the Bears are going to win this game against the Rams. You saw the Rams just go toe-to-toe with the 49ers. Now, the 49ers might not be that good of a team this year. We don't know. But it's still one of those things where they've gone up against the 49ers, had a great game. They've gone up against the Lions, had a great game. I don't know how the Bears offense is going to compete with that. No idea. Sure, they have injuries, but didn't look like it stopped them too much last week. Then you have the Panthers, and at this point, with Andy Dalton going out there and playing, we saw what he did against the Raiders. Might have just been a little bit of shell shock, and that might have just been the Raiders doing Raiders things, but I'm not confident about the Bears going up against the Panthers at this point. Not a chance. Not a chance in hell am I confident about that. The Jags, again, we have seen them just play extremely poorly. These next 2 weeks are going to be kind of determining on how they do in that department, but I'm not confident. The Commanders, they've had some good games. I'm not confident there. There is not a single game remaining on the schedule right now that I can walk into going, I'm confident that the Bears can get a win. Again, I thought the Titans were going to be a confident win. That was not a confident win from the Bears. That was a game where I walked away and I said, I need therapy because of how they played. Texans, I knew they weren't going to win, but I didn't expect them to lose as badly as they did. Granted, it was 19-13, so it's not that bad of a loss, but it's the way that they played. And then this game, this is just full on depression. Like, again, I can't expect this team to win another game this year. I don't know how I can be expected to win. And people are going to say, well, again, the Commanders and Panthers are really, really bad. Okay, let's say they go out there and beat the Panthers and Commanders. They also go up against the Patriots, so I will say there's potentially 3 more winnable games on the schedule. I'm not confident with the Rams, not confident with the Jags, not confident with the Cardinals, especially the way that they've been playing this year. Packers are just going to continue to dominate. The Vikings, who would have thought the Vikings would have been like this year? Going out there and dominating the Texans like they have, dominating the 49ers. The Vikings are probably the best team in the NFC right now. Then you have to go up against the Lions. You're not going to beat the Lions. You're going up against the 49ers. You're not doing that. Seahawks are playing great ball right now, so you're probably not going to do that. So this is a team that right now, with everything going the way that it has been going, again, I'm not confident with the Panthers, Commanders, and Patriots games, but let's just say they win those. They go 4, then they're a 4-win team. Now, I know it's probably too early to be panicking and worrying about a bunch of this stuff, but my God, man, it's hard to not look at what we've seen over these 3 weeks and not hit the panic button. But that's it for me here today, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment on the video, as it really helps out. Make sure to check out the podcasts that we have. And again, we're splitting up a bunch of videos. But till next time, I'm Brendan saying peace.